You're listening to the Start a New Show, Episode 10 with Sumbul Sang.
Does your work energize you? Does it make your impact on the world? Welcome to Start Anew, the show that looks beyond success into freedom, fulfillment, and your passion-driven career. Join your host, Sumbul Sang, for inspiring stories and bite-sized training to help you start anew with clarity. And now, here's Sumbul.
If you are starting anew in life with a new business, a new career, or a new dream, then you have got to start with self-awareness. Download your free self-awareness toolkit at letsstartanew.com. In a moment, you and I will be joined by our guest, Tiffany Largie, a successful entrepreneur and business strategist. She teaches entrepreneurs and small business owners around the world on how to stop thinking small and redefine value for greater profits. In part one of our conversation, Tiffany will be sharing her story of transformation from a broke single mom to a successful business strategist today. In part two of our conversation, Tiffany will teach newbie and wannabe entrepreneurs some foundations of businesses such as cash flow management, tips for increasing sales, and much, much more. Tiffany, hello and welcome to the show.
Hi there.
How are you today?
I'm great. I'm fantastic. Excited to be here on the show with you.
I'm really excited to get to know you today and share your story with our listeners. But before we do that, let's take a step back in time. Tell us about a point in time in your life when you were broke and not very happy. Really paint us a picture of your life at that time.
It's an interesting place because my story actually starts in that space of not just being broke, but it's more being optionless. You know, when you don't have money, you find yourself frustrated and annoyed and a little pissed off sometimes, angry, resentful. You know, you go through a series of emotions where you either want to give up or you want to give in. And for me, I had two little girls at the time. So I had two girls, two kids, and, you know, this single mom was having a really tough time feeding them and, you know, being consistent with feeding them. We used to go to bed hungry. And that's a tough space to be in because not only are you broke, but then, you know, you're responsible for some people and you can't really make good on it. You know, you find yourself in a space of a struggle. So what's absolutely key about that is that I know for certain that not only was that the start point, but it was almost a launching pad. And that's how my story begins. You get fed up of being hungry. You get fed up of being optionless. You get fed up of being tired and frustrated. You just decide one day that I'm done, like you're done, you know? At the time, I had the ability to stay with a job or get a job, right? But they only wanted to pay me like $10 and 22 cents an hour. You know, if you really think about that, like $10.22 an hour. I grew up in Miami, Florida. So $10.22 an hour, $1,600 a month, and it's $1,000 a piece just to put each kid in preschool, if you know, without being arrested, right? So like that math just wasn't going to work. I was minus $400 before I even really got started. So it was a space of I had to not just be able to pay for their, you know, preschool, but I really had to pay for their childcare, other needs like food and diapers and then there's rent and, you know, any other key fun thing that goes on with just trying to make your family run and trying to make your little family work. So I made a decision. I grew tired of people telling me that I wouldn't make it, that it would never happen. I grew tired of people telling me that I, you know, kind of should just stay in my lane, stay in my place. And it's not that I began to dream, but I really began to sit and almost wonder, like, what would life be like if, ... you know, like, what would life be like if? So for me, I would say that key thing is that I made a decision to just stop thinking small. Like, you know, at that time people say, think big, think big. And for me, I'm like, well, what does that mean? Like, what does it mean to think big? How do you quantify that? Yeah, like, what is thinking big? Well, I make $10 an hour. Does that mean if I make $11.55 an hour, like I'm thinking bigger and I'm in a better place? No, it doesn't mean that at all. So I stopped thinking small. I stopped thinking small about my value, about what I had. And I knew that $10.22 an hour thing just totally wasn't going to work out for me. So I started a business. As a mom, the mere concept of entrepreneurship it had more possibilities than getting a job did. For me, it was not just the time, it was also the ability to make whatever money I thought I was worth. And that's what the difference was. Because at that time, every company told me I was worth no more than $10 an hour. And for me, I started to feel like, well, how could they determine my value? You know what I mean? Like, how could they be the ones to determine what I was worth? So it was really like, okay, great. How do I totally just determine my own value? How do I put myself in a position where I'm going to work as hard as I possibly can, and therefore I'll get whatever money that's kind of owed to me from that specific hard work? So I started a business. That's where the journey begins, starting a business.
So it sounds like you went through a huge transformation in your mind there before you even started your business.
Absolutely. I did. Like, I wouldn't let myself think small about myself, about my resources. I wouldn't let myself think small about my own personal value. I wouldn't let myself think small about my skills or the experience.
Well, and did you do this all on your own, this transformation in the mind? Did you have someone help you and coach you on the money mindset, or is it just you?
At that time, it was literally just me. To be honest with you, I had so many people who we call haters that were literally just lined up like every week to tell me what I couldn't do. That in order for me to start thinking, even begin the concept of thinking about like, what could I really do? Like, what was possible? I just had to shut them up. Like, I literally just shut them up and I cut them off. Everybody that wasn't anybody that fell into that space of naysayer. And that was tough. But I was so in love with my little girls and so excited about moments that we could share with what I could do if I had more money, that's what drove me.
So now you realize that you got to start your own business so that you can make money that you're really worth and have some freedom. So what is the first step you take that really commits you to this journey? In general, the first step I took is really the first step that I think every entrepreneur should take. But you know what? I'm not even going to say the word entrepreneur. I'm going to say the word mom or family. Yeah, because I'm a huge believer that entrepreneurship is literally like it's like the safety net of family, of any family, no matter the size. So oftentimes the family or the individual, they're like, well, what do I do? Let me do a ton of research. Let me get all my ducks in a row because I want to be ready. And it's like, no, forget all of that. The very first thing is making a decision. A lot of times I hear the industry talk and they're like, oh, you got to start. And it's like, yeah, you got to start and you got to take action. I get it. And I believe it. And for me, that's step number 2. But step number 1 is totally, hey, you've got to make a decision. Like, you have to make a decision. Like, if I had not made a decision that I was totally fed up and done with my circumstances and where I was, and that that no matter what, things were changing, the reality is that I would have taken some actions and made some steps, but truthfully, I probably would not be very far off from where I started because I hadn't made a decision about how the journey was going to go. This reminds me of a quote from Tony Robbins. He says that destinies are shaped in the moment of decision.
Yes. Yes. He's so right. He's so right.
Yeah. So you've made a resolve now. It's a big commitment there that you're going to do this. Then what happens next?
So I make the decision that my life is going to change. And then I make the decision to make a move. So I actually I'd love to tell you that like I had this grand idea for this business. Like sometimes I see some people like on TV and Shark Tank and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. Like, how did you get that idea? I didn't. I actually went to Barnes and Nobles and I went to the business section. And you know those books that they have, and it's like top 50 businesses you can start for under $1,000. And then it has like the section of like, 500 to 1,000, and then like 100 to 500, and then like 0 to 100. I literally just opened that book and started reading 0 to 100. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's how I started my very first business.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah, I didn't really have any great ideas. I didn't.
So, no, but this is very resourceful. So what was the first business you started?
I started a basket business. So a basket business, not that I made baskets, but I made gift baskets. Mm-hmm. And the gift baskets weren't your traditional. At the time, I didn't have a car. And in Miami, Florida, there's no really good public transportation. So I figured it would be so crazy for me to try to figure out how to make those gift baskets that had like, chocolate and wine and a teddy bear and stuff like that for B2C to a regular consumer. So I decided to kind of just put together an idea that I had in my head where I was like, well, who else can I sell to? So I sold to businesses. And I created this gift basket which is still a great, really and truly, it's still a great business. Anyone should start this business, truthfully. I started a business where I would sell a welcome basket to apartment complexes. Mm-hmm. And it was killer because it was a place where I could sell more than one basket at once. And not only could I sell more than one basket at once, but I could, the items to get to make it like welcome home were inexpensive. Like inside had like a little thing of Tide and some fabric softener, little soap, sponges. I went to the local community and got some coupons. And so now I would have someone actually drive me around with my kids in the back because I didn't have a car. And I would go from apartment complex to apartment complex, not like almost knocking on doors and pitching this basket. And I did that for a while until I got my very first order for roughly about, I think it was like 20 baskets. And I, nearly lost my mind. But I didn't really have a lot of money. So the $100, I borrowed most of it. And I made just enough so that I could have one really good killer sample to take around to show everybody, the idea and the concept.
Amazing.
Yes. I know, random, right? Like a basket business for real. And the funniest part about it is I actually hate baskets. Like I'm not creative at all. Like, it doesn't come natural to me. I used to spend forever trying to figure out how do you wrap the thing and shrink wrap it and then a bow. Oh my gosh. It was horrible. It was horrible.
But I bet it felt a lot better than that job that paid $10.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's like for sure. It totally was a breath of fresh air because it gave me hope.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for the first time, like I really had and owned hope.
So how long did you keep that business for, and when did you start doing something else?
So I kept that business not too long. I actually transitioned when I didn't know I was going to transition. And I just have to tell you the story behind it so it kind of makes sense. I'm in this basket business, and I've been doing it for probably about a year or so, or somewhere inside of there. And I'm at a park with my kids. Now, keep in mind, I'm not bleeding anymore financially. I mean, I'm not hemorrhaging, I should say, but I am bleeding. Like I still, I'm paying some bills, but it's not consistent. And, I don't have a 6-figure business. We're not doing $150,000 in business. But at a minimum, I'm with my kids, we're at home, and I'm making some money. So I'm at a park and in this city, a little bit north of Miami. And across the street, there's like an event going on. And there's an event going on in this event. Now, at the time, I didn't know it was an event. I just knew there was a lot of hustle and bustle. There were like 4 or 5 trucks outside and people were coming in and out. And I just thought it looked exciting. So I walk across the street with my kids and I kind of poke my head in. Now, as I'm walking by, I can see in the back of the truck there are chairs and tables and linen and things like that. But I don't really know what any of it means, right? Mm-hmm. And I decide, well, heck, I'm just going to walk inside. So I get inside and there's this woman standing in the middle with a clipboard. And she kind of looks over to me because I'm approaching her. I'm just curious. This thing looks like they're having a great time. And I walk up to her and I'm like, hey, so hi, introduce myself. And she's not rude, but she's not like, yippee, I'm so happy you're here interrupting me, So I kind of say to her, so what are you doing? And she's like, we're putting on an event. I'm like, whoa, that's, it's neat. And I'm like, so what do you do? And she's like, I'm an event planner. Now, I had never really heard the term before, so I was like, what does an event planner do? Because in my mind, I'm like, well, flip, this looks like a ton of fun, and I hate baskets. maybe I could just do what you're doing. So fast forward, she tells me, weddings and baby showers and corporate events, and I'm like just fascinated. And she's saying it in a way that she's given me enough to shut me up, but not enough that we're going to be in like a 2-hour conversation. So out of nowhere, I say to her, I'm like, hey, have you ever thought of selling your business? Now, I can't explain to you to this day. I really can't, like, why did I do that? Where did it come from? People ask me all the time. And I'm like, I really don't know. Maybe I was a little half crazy. Like, I'm just not sure. But she was standing there looking at me. She looked like she was enjoying what she was doing. And whatever she did looked like fun. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't really having fun in my basket business. So I say this to her and she looks at me for like literally 45 seconds in silence. Now, 45 seconds is like a long time to not say anything, to not respond. And finally she whips out her business card and she's like, well, why don't you call me? I'm very busy right now, but why don't you call me in 2 weeks? Man, I gotta tell you, I was like, yippee, in my mind, right? She was like, sure, but that's not what she said. She was like, just go away and call me in 2 weeks. So I was so excited. In that 2 weeks, I did like all the history I could on that business. Like I drove by the place, like I stalked her, like I was like, I want to know what you do online. I went in, back then it was the Yellow Pages. I read the Yellow Pages. Like I was so ready for this thing. And so fast forward, we meet. Now we meet and the conversation, she's like, hey, the truth is that I've absolutely been thinking of selling my business. And I'm like, what? Oh my gosh, like this is perfect. So, I put on my big girl panties and I'm sitting tall and I'm like, how much do you want for your business? Now, mind you, I've never had a conversation like this before, but I'm like, how much do you want for your business? And she's like, $25,000.
Ouch.
Now, yeah, exactly. And I'm like, oh, I have like $22 in my account, right? So the 25,000, even though it's not a lot of money, it's like for Tiffany Largie, it's totally a stretch. Now, I honestly don't know what to do next, but I do know that, man, if I could just get my hands on this business, it had a storefront. It was already existing. She had been in business apparently for a lot of years, like she had a lot of credibility and stuff. And I thought I was just going to take my little knowledge and just make it magic and apply it to that business. And I would be, rich in my, little mind. So she says that to me and I'm like, well, what if I gave you $30,000 and I paid you $5,000 a month for 6 months? So that's where I really learned a key concept, which is what we teach now, that you've got to get creative and you have to be resourceful. It's so easy for us at times like that to look at a situation and be like, well, I don't have it. It's not possible. So it's just not going to work. But the truth is that not only will it work, but it is a place in which, how do I say, it's a place in which we either sink or swim. Because opportunities present themselves all the time, but we're trying to figure out the how so badly, we don't come to an answer and we're like, oh, okay, this is not going to work out for me. Right?
Yeah.
So at that time, she then says yes. The long story short is she's like, yep. And we did it. So I bought that business, $30,000, $5,000 a month for 6 months.
Amazing resourcefulness all the way through from the start of your journey to this point. Initially, you're running a business which requires a car, you don't have it, but that doesn't stop you from running the business. You don't have childcare arrangements, so you take the kids with you. And now you buy a business with money you don't have yet.
Right. Exactly.
Amazing.
No, yes, absolutely. No, I took that moment. I was absorbing it because it's funny when you say it like that. It's like, whoa, that's something. Yes, but you're right. You're right. And here's the thing. It's really a matter of choice. That's it. It's just being willing to choose. Now, I'm going to finish telling you a little, like a key part about this story, just because I think it's entertaining. At the time, it was not entertaining. But looking back on it, I would not be the businesswoman I am today had I not gone through it. So I buy the business and we go to an attorney's office like a couple weeks later and we quote unquote close on the business. We went to her attorney's office. I sign on the dotted line. I get some little papers. And like a week or two later, it's my first day back in the office or back, to my new store, my new shop. And it's a Saturday morning when I'm driving there, like the windows are down, the sun is beautiful. I'm playing, my favorite song. And I pull up to the front of this thing. And when I show up, the signs off the front of the building are gone. And I'm like, what? So I fly out of my car, I fly inside. Now, keep in mind, I expected to have a few moments where she'd be packing up, like her personal belongings, like a personal picture and stuff like that. But when I got inside, it actually wasn't like that. She was like demolishing the place. And I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? I just bought that business and that. And she's like, no, you bought the assets. And so I'm like, what? What does that mean? Like, what does that mean? She's like, no, you bought the assets, the things. It turns out that she knew exactly what she was doing and she sold me assets. Now I was young. I didn't even know what that word meant, So I'm like, what's an asset? Like never even heard the term before. So basically she was a smart woman and she sold me all the items that she didn't want in that business. And not only did she sell me all the items she didn't want, but she took her name, the phone number, the website, her company. She took it all. Wow. And she left me in a store that I had signed a brand new lease for with a bunch of junk and a note for $30,000.
Ouch.
Yes. I'll tell you, I wallowed. I cried. I just thought the world was coming to an end. I really did. And it was painful. But that's where I learned this next key concept of, man, you've absolutely got to do whatever it takes.
How do you pick yourself up from a point like that?
You don't do it immediately. You need a few moments to kind of grasp what just happened. I'm staring at her in disbelief. I'm angry. She keeps moving about her world. And finally, I'm left alone in the store with a bunch of junk. And I started calling eventually I picked myself up off the ground, literally, and I started calling all businesses that were related to this industry. And I started saying, hey, I'm the new owner of this new company. I didn't even have a name because she took the doggone name, So it was like Events by Tiffany, and I basically said I was giving not a discount, but almost like a finder's fee if anybody could refer me somebody to do their event for them. Mm-hmm. Now this store they did tuxedos and wedding dresses and tablecloths. So they kind of did it all, but they promoted that they specialized in event planning. And so at that moment, I now became an event planner with no experience, which was just great. And I was calling until I was blue in the face with the phone book. Finally, like at the end of the day, when I feel like all hope is lost, I get a call from a guy who's like, oh, I've got this couple in my store and they're interested, they may be good candidates for you. They're talking about event planning. And I was like, yippee, in my mind. And I get them on the phone and I make an appointment for later on that week. So I make a key decision that if I'm going to become like anything to these people, I got to go and figure this thing out. So where do I go? I head back to Barnes & Noble. And yeah, you talk about being a 24-hour expert, man. If there was one, I was it. I was it, because I read the hell out of every magazine, book, Martha Stewart, The Knot. I mean, I just read them until I was crazy. I knew the destinations, what we shouldn't feed guests. You know, like I knew everything about everybody or every part of the wedding on paper, at least. Mm-hmm. And it was enough for me to feel confident to have that conversation. So 2 weeks later, listen to me. 2 days later, at the end of that week, they come into the shop and I am ecstatic. I got a clipboard and we go through this, process. They've got questions for me. I've got answers. They've got high level questions for me. I've got answers. Yeah. And, we kind of get to this point where not that they can't ask me anything else, but they've really done a great job of just asking me quite a bit. And inside of asking me quite a bit, there are a handful of questions that I can't answer. And I'm like, oh, I'll get back to you on that, but it's really a small handful. And finally, the bride, she's like, she turns to her, I guess, husband-to-be, and she's like, I really didn't plan on choosing an event planner right now, but I'll be honest with you, Tiffany just sounds so confident. She makes me confident. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm dying in my chair. And because I have a piece of paper that I typed up on my little computer the day before that said you had to give me a 25% deposit, that I had read in a magazine, mind you. That's how I knew to do it. And so I'm like, all right, I'd love to move forward with you guys. And I turn over the piece of paper in the contract and they sign. And that was a journey for me because it was like so many lessons wrapped into one. And I had never done anything like that before in my life. I mean, they gave me a deposit that was in the thousands, and I jumped for joy. I became a believer, like so many things happened for me at that moment. I understood more about my own value. I understood why when you're afraid, you have to move anyways. Mm-hmm. It's like I learned so many concepts at that moment. And, I won't say the rest is history, but that was my first go around at a multiple six-figure business or at a six-figure business.
And that's not a long time after your first business, is it?
No, it's not. It's absolutely not. No, I didn't make six figures in baskets.
No surprise there.
Right. No shock. I mean, I hated those gymnastics, but I got through it. It's funny.
Wow. So now with your resourcefulness and your resilience and a lot more of good things in you, you're running an event management company and making six-figure. So how does this change your life, your family life for you?
Oh my gosh, it changes my family life literally like in so many different dynamics. My confidence soared. I would say that that's probably the most notable thing. I mean, I was young. I had these two girls. I loved these children, but my confidence wasn't there all the time. And so like one of the first tangible things was, man, my confidence soared. Like I really began to understand like what was I made of? What was possible if I dreamed? What could possibly happen if I took a step that didn't seem feasible, that didn't seem practical? So my family dynamic changed in the sense that I became a more effective mom. I became a more effective teacher. I just became more effective as a human being. Like, I think I really plugged back into the universe at that time.
Mm-hmm. And what about some practical circumstances like childcare arrangements and stuff? Did you make some changes there?
At that time, no. I guess I did. One of the cool things is that I could bring my kids to my shop with me. Mm-hmm. They didn't come with me every day or most of the week, but every once in a while I totally brought them. They were cute, so they helped me to sell things. And they were cute, really cute. And so I got away with bringing them there. But other times it became a juggling act because a lot of times we hear, oh, that person has a six-figure business. It doesn't mean that they're taking home six figures, and that's the clarity, right, that people really need to own. Six figures just means you have the amount of revenue that now you should be able to pay your bills respectively, and being able to start thinking about investing in your business in a different capacity. So truth be told, the answer is, things shifted where I could do a little bit more better care. Before that, I was with them most of the time, or a lot of the time, I would say. I relied on some people I knew in the distance. Unfortunately, no one lived around me at that time when I had the basket business. So there really wasn't a lot of people to say, hey, can you watch, the kids for me? But when I had that store, I moved. And it gave me access to a few more people who I could, kind of barter with, if you will, and say, hey, can you watch them? So we kind of juggled. That's the truth. It just didn't make financial sense for me to do childcare at the beginning. But after a while, I absolutely did do childcare and put them in preschool, which was awesome.
So it's preschool, so that's still when they're only 4 or 5 years old, is it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay. So, wow. So you've gone from being broke in a matter of what? Is it a couple years?
It's a couple of years. I mean, I would say it took me probably maybe 3 years, I would say, to kind of get really solid ground. For me, at every level, at every step of the game, it was just a matter of like, how do I make more money, right? How do I get to that next level and now make more money, right? How do I, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like you get to a space and you're like, well, I'm making some money. It's great, but what would happen if I could double this? How do I get to that next place where I could make more money than I'm making today? So I would say it probably took me about 3 years to get to a space where I made money that was exciting for me, where I made thousands of dollars in that month, north of 5,000. And I was like, whoa, look at that. Where it was cash in hand, not hypothetical, not, money that came in and I still have to pay out for, other people. No, cash that hit my bank account. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've been on the journey for about roughly 13 years, I would say. So I would say somewhere between year 3 and 5 is really when the game changed drastically for me. The bleeding stopped right before that. And a lot of times entrepreneurs go down a journey and it's like you're hemorrhaging, where you're still in business, but you're not making any money and you have money to pay out. That's where you're hemorrhaging. And so for me, my number one thing is to figure out two things. One, first is how do we stop hemorrhaging? And then second, how do we stop the bleeding altogether? So we stop hemorrhaging by plugging up holes that are open inside of our business or inside of our life, right? For me, that meant making some major shifts in my life and what I surrounded myself with and things that we spent money on. And then you move to another space where you're not hemorrhaging anymore, but you're still bleeding, which means you're running a business or you're working, or this could be the same for someone who has a job, but they're always stealing from Peter to pay Paul. It's like, you have money, the money is circulating, there is money coming in every month, but it's still not enough because you always find yourself without something. And just because, it's not being without light or not being without water in your home. Like for me, my kids want to go on a field trip and I have to say, no, that's me doing without something. That's not in my mind a luxury for my kids. It's a standard. It's a standard item that I feel like as a parent, I want to be able to provide. Right?
Yeah.
So when you don't have the money to pay for that, you're still bleeding.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So tell us the key milestones from that point when you're running this event management company, making good money to where you are today working as a business strategist.
Yeah. So after that, I went into hardware, technology, office hardware. I had another opportunity that came across my table and I took it. And that's really where I got into multiple six figures, which was just an exciting time, a lot of learning. and a lot of building. After that, I actually moved in 2010. I heard about an area in North Carolina that had low market share. And so I moved and built my first true business where the business ran without me. Right? So when I got to multiple six figures, that's great. But the truth is that if you're running a business and that business still depends on you for every single, wheel being moved, then it's fun, but it's no fun. Because what happens when you want to, take off? When you want to go spend time with your kids, you want to go on vacation, you want to go explore in the world. You really, most of the times you can't do that when you have, especially when you have a brick and mortar business or when you have a business at home, if you're running you're a consultant and you have a lot of face time with your clients. So for me, I had this inkling that it was possible to build a 7-figure business. I just didn't know how, or to build a business that had the ability to run with me. So in 2010, I embarked on a journey, or actually started in late 2009, but really I got settled in a new place in March of 2010. And what's fascinating about it is that I kind of went on a whim. I closed my business in Florida. I got rid of everything I owned, and we took a risk, and I moved my little family to North Carolina. And what's crazy about that is that it's not really about moving North Carolina. It's really just about moving there without a clear plan on how this thing is going to happen and a clear map to follow. I had to create it myself. So I started from zero, and in about 4.5 years, we did $2.5 million in sales.
Wow.
Each year. And what's really killer to me about that is that I learned so much. I mean, I did an acquisition that time. I sold a company during that time frame. Like my business acumen and my ability to build an infrastructure really grew. Did I do everything right? Absolutely not. But I learned so much that it allowed me to build a business where, when I left, I had 3 offices and roughly 15 employees. So now I got to a space where the clarity on the kind of life that I wanted to live became clearer. And building a business that had structure and processes in place became huge. And so it wasn't about the ability to sell, but it was about the ability to scale. And sometimes, and from a mom's perspective, that's a big deal, because it's easy for moms, it's easy for women in my position to want to be all hands on deck, right? They want to be inside and involved and all of that. But the truth is that the growth of the company actually happens when I'm not involved. From really getting the juice of great ideas from other people that are on your team and leveraging them for a greater purpose, a bigger picture.
It's a whole new ball game.
Yeah, absolutely. Like literally a totally new ball game. And I did that for roughly about 5 years. Amazing experience. And I made a decision one day that now it was time for me to kind of spread my own wings and fly a little bit more. Because I grew tired of hearing this industry of coaches teaching other entrepreneurs or other people how to build and grow their business, but they had never really built a business other than the one that they were in. Or, their knowledge, I'm not saying it's not good or bad, but it was limited because it comes from a certified coaching perspective, something you learn in a textbook. For me, I feel like there's no better teacher than experience. And when it comes to almost anything around getting from 0 to 100,000, 100 to multiple six to 7, and 7 and beyond, it's like, my gosh, if there's anything I've learned how to do that through my own trial and error, which is exactly how we build our programs. So we build our programs and how we service the market is a little bit different because it's in a practical, like step-by-step way for where you are. And before I got to 6 figures, I could use the internet, but I basically just use like AOL Instant Messenger, right? Asking me to get involved in like a website or any of that. Are you kidding me? Really? That's so overwhelming. I couldn't have made heads or tails on that. So, for me, it's really important to provide that kind of practical, like step-by-step, that's not about landing pages or funnels, but that's more about actions that I can take today or that the person can take today right where they are. Because all of my businesses, I started with no money, no venture capital, no credit card, no nothing, absolutely nothing. So I know if I can do it without the education, without the skill, without the work experience, I know that there are people out there that can do it.
Tiffany, thank you for going deep and personal with us. There are so many valuable lessons to be learned from your story, and I'm sure it will inspire many to take action to start their own dreams. Don't forget to join me on Wednesday when I continue my conversation with Tiffany when she puts her coaching hat on and teaches you actionable tips on how to become successful in your new business. If you liked what you heard today, then please help other people find the Start a New Show on iTunes by subscribing, rating, and reviewing it. If you don't know how to do that, go to letstartanew.com/review.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Start a New Show. We invite you to be more than a passive listener. Be a starter. Join our community and snag exclusive freebies from Symbol and her guests at letstartanew.com. Create your vision of freedom and fulfillment right here on the Start a New Show.